What if the destiny of an entire nation rested on the shoulders of one man, a man challenged to defy the might of an empire with nothing but unwavering faith? We'll experience the terrifying plagues of Egypt. Do you imagine the courage it takes to stand alone against a pharaoh, armed only with divine promises and a deep conviction in the unseen? Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel, Naseeha Studio. Today in this video we will be talking about some of the fascinating miracles of Prophet Musa. The story of Prophet Musa, Moses, is a powerful reminder of how faith and courage can overcome incredible obstacles. His life journey, from growing up in the luxury of an Egyptian palace to leading his people through the desert to Mount Sinai, is filled with moments of divine miracles and tests of faith. This story takes place during a time when Egypt was a land of great pyramids, mysterious gods, and all-powerful pharaohs. The saga starts with a chilling prophecy that made the Egyptian pharaoh panic. It was said that a boy from the enslaved Israelites would rise up and overthrow him. In fear, Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys to be killed. But Musa was born during these dangerous times, and his life was spared in a miraculous way. His mother put him in a basket and let him float down the Nile, trusting God to protect him. The river, which had seen so much of Egypt's history, carried Musa safely to Pharaoh's own palace, where he was raised in ignorance of his true origins. Musa's life changed forever when he discovered he was an Israelite and saw the suffering of his people. This realization pushed him towards his destiny as a leader and a prophet. His journey was marked by amazing signs from God, starting with a mysterious burning bush on Mount Sinai, where he received his mission to confront Pharaoh and lead his people to freedom. His path was full of miraculous events, such as turning his staff into a serpent and parting the Red Sea, each reinforcing his mission and testing his faith. This script will take us through these incredible moments, showing how Musa's strong faith was repeatedly confirmed through miraculous signs. We'll experience the terrifying plagues of Egypt, the thrilling escape of the Exodus, and the divine revelations at Sinai, all pivotal events that shaped a covenant and laid the groundwork for future generations. Join us as we follow Musa's journey, a story of a man driven by his deep faith, guiding his people through uncertainty to a promised land and forever changing the spiritual and moral landscape. Through his story, we explore the powerful role of faith in seeking freedom and justice. What can we learn from Musa's commitment to his calling, and how does his legacy still influence us today? Early life of Musa. The early life of Musa, Moses, is a tale wrapped in divine providence and human intrigue, marked by events that seem nothing short of miraculous. Born into a time of fear and oppression, Musa's journey from a helpless infant hidden in the reeds of the Nile to a prince of Egypt encapsulates a series of divine interventions and dramatic turns. Birth and prophecy. In ancient Egypt, the Hebrews lived as slaves, their lives consumed by hard labor and sorrow. It was during this period of despair that a troubling prophecy reached the ears of the pharaoh. The oracle foretold the rise of a leader from among the Hebrews who would end his reign and free his people. Driven by fear and determined to maintain his rule, Pharaoh issued a chilling decree. Every newborn Hebrew boy was to be thrown into the Nile, a grim attempt to snuff out the future threat. Amidst this dark backdrop, a Hebrew woman named Jochebed gave birth to a son. In defiance of Pharaoh's edict, she hid her newborn for 3 months. However, as the child grew, hiding him became perilous. Jochebed crafted a desperate plan, one that would rely entirely on her faith in the divine. She made a waterproof basket, placed her son inside, and set it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. Musa's sister, Miriam, stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Adoption by Pharaoh's family. The basket carrying the infant Musa drifted gently along the edges of the river until it was discovered by an unlikely savior, Pharaoh's daughter. She was moved by compassion upon hearing the baby's cries, and recognizing him as one of the Hebrew children, she decided to defy her father's decree. Pharaoh's daughter adopted the baby as her own, naming him Musa, which means drawn out of the water. Musa's entrance into the royal family marked the beginning of a unique life, one that bridged two vastly different worlds, the opulence of the Egyptian elite and the humble beginnings of his true heritage. As a prince of Egypt, Musa received the finest education, learning the arts of leadership, diplomacy, and warfare, all the while remaining unaware of his Hebrew lineage. Discovery of heritage. Musa's life took a profound turn on the day he learned of his true origins. As a young man, he ventured outside the palace walls and was confronted with the harsh reality of his people's suffering. The sight of Hebrew slaves toiling under the whip of Egyptian taskmasters filled him with a deep sense of injustice and kinship. The pivotal moment of self-discovery came when Musa witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Overcome with anger and a sense of justice for his fellow Hebrew, Musa intervened and in the heat of the moment killed the Egyptian. Fearing the repercussions and realizing his position in the palace could no longer protect him, Musa fled Egypt. He headed into the desert not only to escape Pharaoh's wrath, but also to seek solitude and guidance, marking the end of his life in Egypt and the beginning of his true mission: reflection and exile. Musa's flight took him to Midian, a land far from the splendors and intrigues of Egypt. In Midian, Musa encountered Jethro, also known as Reuel, a priest and shepherd who offered him sanctuary. Musa married Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters, and settled into a pastoral life, tending sheep in the rugged, tranquil landscapes of Midian. This period of reflection and relative tranquility lasted for several years, during which Musa grew into a man of resilience and wisdom. It was in the desolate beauty of the desert that Musa would encounter God through the mysterious and transformative vision of the burning bush. This divine encounter would not only rekindle his connection to his Hebrew roots, but also redefine his destiny. God's call at the burning bush marked the transition from Musa's early life of privilege and subsequent exile to his role as a prophet and leader. It was here that he received the divine command to return to Egypt, confront Pharaoh, and lead the Hebrews out of bondage. The early life of Musa, thus, is a narrative of contrasts and transitions, from a river's edge to royal halls, from hidden origins to a discovered identity, and from a life of comfort to a calling filled with challenges. Each phase of his life prepared him for the monumental tasks that lay ahead, shaping him into a leader capable of carrying out one of history's most significant liberations. Through these formative years, the stage was set for Musa to embrace his destiny as a prophet, a liberator, and a guide, leading his people toward a promised future. The call and mission of Musa. The call and mission of Prophet Musa, Moses, represent pivotal moments in his life, transforming him from an exiled shepherd to a leader with a divine purpose. These events are not only central to his personal development, but also crucial to the unfolding narrative of the Israelites' liberation from Egyptian bondage. The burning bush. In the rugged, serene landscapes of Midian, where Musa had sought refuge and a new life as a shepherd, he experienced an extraordinary divine encounter that would redefine his destiny. While tending his flock near Mount Horeb, also known as Mount Sinai, Musa stumbled upon a sight that was both bewildering and awe-inspiring, a bush that was engulfed in flames yet remained unscathed. This phenomenon, defying all natural explanations, marked the moment of Musa's prophetic call. As Musa approached this curious spectacle, God called out to him from within the flames. The voice instructed him to remove his sandals, for he was standing on holy ground. This act was symbolic, signifying the sanctity of the moment and Musa's entry into a sacred role. God then revealed his plan to Musa, expressing his awareness of the Israelites' suffering in Egypt and his intention to deliver them through Musa's leadership. Divine instructions and Musa's hesitation. God's command was clear. Musa was to return to Egypt, confront Pharaoh, and demand the release of the Israelites. However, the task was daunting, and Musa, aware of his own limitations, hesitated. He expressed doubts about his ability to persuade Pharaoh and lead the people, citing his lack of eloquence and fear of not being believed by the Israelites or the Egyptian court. In response to Musa's uncertainties, God provided reassurances and signs to bolster his confidence. One such sign was the transformation of Musa's staff into a serpent when thrown to the ground, and back into a staff when picked up. Additionally, God granted him the ability to turn his hand leprous white and then restore it, demonstrating the divine power that would accompany him. These signs were meant not only to convince Musa, but also to serve as proofs of divine backing for the skeptical Israelites and Pharaoh. Furthermore, God addressed Musa's concern about his articulation by appointing his brother Aaron as his spokesman. Aaron, known for his eloquence, would accompany Musa, speaking on his behalf to the people and Pharaoh. This partnership strengthened Musa's resolve and equipped him better for the challenges ahead. Return to Egypt. Fortified with divine signs and reassured by God's promises, Musa set out for Egypt. Before his departure, he sought and received blessings from his father-in-law, Jethro, who advised him to serve God faithfully. Musa's return to Egypt was not merely a physical journey, but a profound spiritual undertaking, marking his transformation from a fugitive to a prophet and leader. Upon arriving in Egypt, Musa and Aaron convened the elders of Israel to communicate God's message and display the miraculous signs they had been given. The signs served their purpose. The elders believed, and the spirit of hope was kindled among the Israelites. For the first time in many years, they dared to believe that deliverance from their suffering was possible. Confrontation with Pharaoh. The mission progressed to its next formidable phase, confronting Pharaoh. Musa and Aaron, bearing the authority of God's mandate, demanded that Pharaoh release the Israelites to worship their God in the desert. Predictably, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused their request. Not only did he deny their demands, but he also increased the Israelites' burdens, ordering them to make the same number of bricks without supplying the necessary straw. This response from Pharaoh set the stage for a direct confrontation between divine will and human arrogance. It highlighted Pharaoh's defiance and his underestimation of the God of Israel, setting in motion a series of divine interventions that would manifest as the 10 plagues. Each plague represented a challenge to the Egyptian gods and a demonstration of God's power over nature and the Egyptian empire. Musa's role as a leader was solidified through these challenges. Each encounter with Pharaoh tested his resolve and deepened his reliance on God's guidance. Through this mission, Musa not only delivered God's messages, but also embodied the principles of faith, obedience, and courage. His journey from the solitude of Midian to the courts of Pharaoh illustrates a profound narrative of divine calling and human response. Miracles in Egypt, signs of divine authority and challenge to Pharaoh. The mission of Prophet Musa, Moses, in Egypt is highlighted by a series of profound miracles that not only reaffirmed the faith of the Israelites, but also served as a direct challenge to Pharaoh and the Egyptian pantheon. These events showcased divine power and set the stage for the eventual liberation of the Israelites. This section of the script details the miracles that occurred in Egypt, each underscoring the might and authority of God. Confrontation with Pharaoh. Upon returning to Egypt, Musa, accompanied by his brother Aaron, faced Pharaoh with a bold demand to let the Israelites go so they might worship their God. Pharaoh's heart, as predicted by God, was hardened. He not only refused the request, but mocked the God of Israel, increasing the labor demands on the Israelites as a punitive measure for their audacity. This cruel response from Pharaoh precipitated a series of divine actions, manifested through miracles that Musa and Aaron performed by God's command. The staff turning into a serpent. The first miracle occurred during an initial confrontation with Pharaoh. To demonstrate their divine backing, Musa threw down his staff at God's command, and it miraculously transformed into a serpent. This sign was particularly symbolic, as the serpent held significant power and religious symbolism in Egyptian culture. Pharaoh, unimpressed and undeterred, called upon his magicians who replicated the feat through sorcery. However, the serpent from Musa's staff swallowed the serpents of the magicians, signifying the superiority of God's power over Egyptian magic. Despite this clear sign, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. The 9 plagues. As Pharaoh continued to resist and refuse the release of the Israelites, Egypt was subjected to 9 devastating plagues, each representing a direct challenge to specific Egyptian gods and a demonstration of God's dominion over all creation. Number 1. Blood, turning the Nile to blood. Aaron, by God's command, struck the Nile with Musa's staff, turning its waters into blood, a vital blow to Egypt, whose civilization depended on the Nile. This plague also challenged the Egyptian god, Hapi, deity of the Nile, showing God's supremacy over Egypt's life source. Number 2. Frogs. Frogs swarmed the land, emerging from the bloodied river. This was not only a physical annoyance, but a spiritual challenge to Heka, the god of fertility and renewal, often depicted with a frog's head. Number 3. Lice. From the dust of the earth, lice infested all of Egypt, affecting people and animals alike. This plague demonstrated God's dominion over the earth itself, challenging Geb, the god of the earth. Number 4. Wild animals or flies. Swarms of possibly wild animals or flies invaded Egyptian homes, disrupting daily life and emphasizing the encroaching chaos brought about by resistance to God's will. Number 5. Pestilence. A severe pestilence killed Egyptian livestock, a direct blow to Hathor, goddess of love and protection, often depicted as a cow. Number 6. Boils. Ash from furnaces was thrown into the air by Musa and Aaron, coming down as festering boils on humans and animals. This plague challenged several healing deities, including Sekhmet, god of war and healing. Number 7. Hail. The 7th plague brought down fiery hail, ruining crops and lands, challenging Nut, the sky goddess, and Isis, goddess of life and magic. Number 8. Locusts. Locusts followed the hail, consuming any remaining crops and vegetation, a devastating blow to Osiris, god of agriculture. Number 9. Darkness. Darkness fell over Egypt for 3 days, a profound challenge to Ra, the sun god, central to Egyptian religion and power, hardening of Pharaoh's heart. Throughout these plagues, Pharaoh's heart hardened, each time initially agreeing to let the Israelites go, only to retract his decision as soon as relief came. This pattern underscored the conflict between divine will and human stubbornness. God's purpose in these plagues was not only to compel Pharaoh to release his people, but also to demonstrate his power and authority, not just to the Egyptians, but importantly, to the Israelites themselves. Each plague escalated in intensity, demonstrating God's control over all aspects of the natural and spiritual world, systematically dismantling the religious and cultural pillars of Egyptian civilization. These signs affirmed Musa's prophetic authority and reinforced the Israelites' faith, preparing them for their eventual departure from Egypt. Preparing for deliverance. As the plagues unfolded, Musa continued to act as the intermediary between God and both the Israelites and Pharaoh. Through these events, he emerged not only as a leader, but as a prophet of God, equipped with divine signs and wonders. His mission, underscored by these miraculous events, was clear: to lead the Israelites out of bondage and towards a promised destiny. The culmination of these miracles prepared the ground for the 10th and final plague, the death of the firstborn, which would ultimately break Pharaoh's resolve. The narrative of these plagues and Musa's role in them illustrate the profound theme of liberation through divine intervention, highlighting the ongoing battle between divine authority and human resistance. This script segment sets the stage for the climactic exodus, where the power of faith and the destiny of a nation would manifest fully. The Exodus, a night of deliverance and the journey to freedom. The Exodus marks the climax of the Israelites' liberation story, a dramatic escape from slavery under the cover of night, led by Prophet Musa, Moses, and orchestrated by divine intervention. This epical event is not just a physical departure from Egypt, but a spiritual journey into a covenantal relationship with God. This segment of the script explores the meticulous preparations for the Exodus, the harrowing escape, and the immediate aftermath as the Israelites embarked on their journey towards the Promised Land. The 10th plague, death of the firstborn. The final, most devastating plague was the death of every firstborn in Egypt. God instructed Musa to inform all Israelite families to mark their doorposts with the blood of a lamb, a sign for the angel of death to pass over their homes. This event, the Passover, signified their final act of obedience before their deliverance and has been commemorated by the Jewish people ever since. As midnight struck, a great cry went up throughout Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead, from the humblest servants' quarters to the palace of Pharaoh. The death of his own firstborn son finally shattered Pharaoh's resolve. Overwhelmed by grief and fear, he summoned Musa and Aaron during the night and urged them to leave at once, along with the Israelites, their flocks and herds, blessing them and pleading for a blessing in return. The departure under cover of night. The Israelites, having lived in Egypt for 430 years, left in such haste that their bread did not have time to rise, symbolized later in the eating of unleavened bread during Passover. They gathered their belongings and their livestock, and with the dough they carried in kneading troughs wrapped in clothing, they began their journey. A mixed multitude of non-Israelites, perhaps slaves or other oppressed peoples, joined them, drawn by the promise of freedom and the powerful acts of God they had witnessed. As the Israelites departed, they fulfilled a promise made generations before, carrying the bones of Joseph, who had made the sons of Israel swear to bring his remains back to Canaan. This act symbolized their full recovery of identity and heritage, a people no longer defined by slavery, but by their ancestral promises. The Red Sea, miraculous crossing. The dramatic escape led the Israelites to the shores of the Red Sea. Behind them, Pharaoh, in a change of heart and driven by rage and loss, pursued them with his elite chariot forces. As the Egyptian army approached, panic set in among the Israelites, trapped between Pharaoh's advancing troops and the sea. In this moment of utter despair, Musa's faith stood firm. He reassured the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then, following God's command, Musa stretched out his hand over the sea, and God drove the sea back with a strong east wind, turning it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground, with walls of water on their right and left. This miraculous crossing is one of the most iconic events in biblical history, a direct manifestation of divine power supporting the Israelites. The destruction of Pharaoh's forces. As the Israelites reached the other side, the Egyptian army, in their pursuit, entered the path through the sea. God then told Musa to stretch out his hand over the sea once more. As he did, the waters flowed back, and the Egyptians were caught in the turmoil. The sea returned to its full depth, swallowing chariots, horses, and all of Pharaoh's forces that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. From the opposite shore, the Israelites saw the mighty Egyptian army defeated, confirming their deliverance and the might of God protecting them. This event reinforced Musa's leadership and God's covenant with Israel. It was a profound confirmation of faith for the Israelites, who feared and believed in the Lord and his servant Musa deeply. Musa's first communication with Allah. One day, while tending to his sheep in the wilderness, Prophet Musa, Moses, saw something extraordinary, a bush that was on fire but wasn't burning up. Curious, Musa approached the bush, and suddenly he heard Allah's voice telling him to take off his sandals because he was standing on holy ground. This was the moment Allah chose Musa to go back to Egypt and free the Israelites from slavery. With Allah's mission in his heart, Musa returned to Egypt. He knew he needed to show Pharaoh and the Israelites that Allah was with him, so Allah gave him the power to perform miracles. One of these was, with his staff, a simple shepherd's stick. When Musa stood before Pharaoh, he threw down his staff, and it miraculously turned into a serpent. This wasn't just a magic trick like those done by Pharaoh's magicians. This was a real sign that Allah was powerful and supporting Musa. The serpent, a symbol highly respected in Egyptian culture, now under Musa's command, made a clear statement about who really held the power. This incredible event was just the beginning. Musa would go on to perform more miracles, each one proving more and more that Allah was with him, guiding him to lead his people to freedom. Through these acts, Musa showed everyone the strength of his faith and the truth of his mission. Revelation and challenges. After their escape from Egypt, the Israelites reached Mount Sinai, a crucial place where they would grow from a group of escaped slaves into a nation guided by Allah. Here, they experienced important revelations and faced big challenges that tested their commitment to their new relationship with Allah. This part of the story focuses on these key events. The revelation at Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, Moses went up the mountain to talk to Allah. The mountain was covered in smoke and shook from Allah's presence. It was here that Allah gave Moses the 10 Commandments, rules that would help the Israelites live good lives and maintain justice and respect among each other. These rules were part of a special agreement, or covenant, between Allah and the Israelites. Moses brought these commandments down on stone tablets, showing that the Israelites had agreed to follow Allah's laws. The 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments, given by God to Prophet Musa, Moses, on Mount Sinai, are a set of rules that have had a profound impact on the laws and moral ethics of many societies. These commandments are fundamental guidelines intended to shape the conduct of the Israelites and are foundational to both Jewish and Christian religious teachings. Here's a simple list of the 10 Commandments. Number 1. You shall have no other Allah before me. This commandment instructs believers to worship only Allah and prohibits the worship of any other gods or idols. Number 2. You shall not make for yourself an idol. This prohibits the making or worshipping of idols or images as divine, reinforcing the concept of an invisible, singular Allah. Number 3. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your Allah. This commandment warns against using Allah's name in vain, such as in cursing or frivolous talk, emphasizing respect for the divine name. Number 4. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. This requires setting aside the seventh day of the week as a day of rest and worship, dedicated to Allah. Number 5. Honor your father and your mother. This commandment encourages respect for parents and elders, recognizing their role in providing guidance and nurturing family bonds. Number 6. You shall not murder. A direct prohibition against taking another person's life, underscoring the value of human life. Number 7. You shall not commit adultery. This safeguards the sanctity of marriage, prohibiting sexual relationships outside of the marriage bond. Number 8. You shall not steal. This commandment prohibits taking anything not rightfully one's own, emphasizing honesty and respect for others' property. Number 9. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. This forbids lying or bearing false witness, particularly in judicial settings, to ensure justice and truthfulness. Number 10. You shall not covet. This warns against desiring others' possessions, spouse, or any property, promoting contentment and integrity. These commandments form a moral foundation aimed at guiding the Israelites in creating a just, respectful, and faithful community. They emphasize a direct and personal relationship between individuals and Allah, as well as between individuals themselves, fostering a society built on respect for divine authority and human dignity. Thanks for tuning in to today's video. If you enjoyed this video and found it interesting, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more content celebrating the Islamic heritage. Your support really helps spread these important stories and teachings. We hope that Allah brings peace, happiness, and success to you and your family.